Imagine discovering a set of mental laws so powerful that they could rewire your brain's default responses to stress, rejection, loss, and uncertainty. Not gradually, not eventually, but with the kind of immediate clarity that makes you wonder how you lived without this understanding. These aren't modern psychological techniques or trendy mindfulness practices. These are ancient laws of human consciousness, tested across millennia by some of history's most resilient minds, and they operate with the same reliability as the laws of physics. Once you understand them, once you begin to apply them consistently, the very architecture of your mental experience transforms in ways that feel almost miraculous. The Stoic philosophers weren't merely theorists contemplating abstract ideas in comfortable academies. They were practitioners facing the rawest extremes of human experience. Marcus Aurelius governed a plague-ravaged empire while battling on multiple fronts. Epictetus endured slavery and physical disability. Seneca navigated political exile and the constant threat of execution under one of history's most volatile emperors. Yet each of them discovered something extraordinary. There are immutable laws governing human consciousness that, when understood and applied, make external circumstances largely irrelevant to inner peace and personal power. Today, we're going to explore 8 of these transformative laws, each one capable of fundamentally altering how your mind processes reality. These aren't suggestions or preferences. They're laws in the truest sense, operating whether you're aware of them or not. The difference is that conscious application of these laws puts you in partnership with the deepest patterns of human psychology rather than fighting against them. And if this exploration resonates with you, I encourage you to subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments about which law feels most relevant to your current life circumstances. Your engagement helps these timeless insights reach others who might desperately need them. The first law is what I call the law of perception sovereignty. This law states that no external event has inherent meaning. Meaning is always assigned by the perceiver. This sounds almost too simple to be profound, yet it represents perhaps the most revolutionary discovery in human psychology. Epictetus expressed this law when he taught that people are disturbed not by events themselves, but by their opinions about events. Once you truly grasp this law, you realize that you've been living in a world largely of your own creation, suffering from interpretations you've unconsciously chosen. Consider 2 people experiencing identical circumstances. Both lose their jobs on the same day. Both have similar financial obligations. Both face uncertain futures. One person spirals into depression, seeing the job loss as evidence of personal failure, proof that life is unfair, confirmation that security is impossible in an unstable world. The other person experiences the same event as liberation from an unsatisfying situation, an opportunity to pursue something more aligned with their values, a chance to discover capabilities they never knew they possessed. The circumstances are identical. The meanings assigned are completely different, creating entirely different emotional and psychological experiences. This law doesn't minimize the reality of difficult circumstances or suggest that positive thinking can solve all problems. Rather, it reveals that your emotional suffering is always mediated by your interpretation of events, and interpretation is something you can influence through conscious practice. When you begin to catch yourself assigning catastrophic meanings to neutral events, when you start questioning whether your initial interpretation is the only possible one, you reclaim enormous psychological power. You stop being a victim of circumstances and become an active participant in creating your experience of reality. The second law is the law of control discrimination, which states that peace and power are directly proportional to your ability to distinguish between what you can and cannot control. This law operates with mathematical precision. The more mental energy you invest in things beyond your control, the less energy you have available for things within your control, creating a cascade of powerlessness and frustration. Conversely, the more you focus exclusively on your sphere of influence, the more powerful and peaceful you become. Most people violate this law constantly, spending enormous amounts of mental energy trying to control other people's opinions, government policies, weather patterns, economic conditions, or the pace of their own healing from past traumas. This isn't just ineffective, it's actively harmful because it trains your brain to associate effort with failure. When you repeatedly try to control uncontrollable things, You condition yourself to expect powerlessness, which then becomes your default assumption about all circumstances. The Stoics identified a very small list of things actually within human control: your judgments, your responses, your values, your effort, and your attention. Everything else, without exception, falls outside your direct influence. This might initially seem limiting, but it's actually incredibly liberating. When you stop trying to control the uncontrollable, you discover that your actual sphere of influence is far more powerful than you realized. You can't control whether people respect you, but you can control whether your actions are worthy of respect. You can't control whether you succeed at a particular venture, but you can control the quality of effort you bring to it. The third law is the law of temporal reality, which states that psychological suffering occurs only when consciousness is displaced from the present moment. This law reveals why anxiety and regret are the dominant forms of modern psychological distress. Anxiety is always about future events that haven't occurred and may never occur. Regret is always about past events that are absolutely unchangeable. Both states involve your consciousness being somewhere other than where you actually exist, the present moment. Marcus Aurelius understood this law deeply, writing extensively about the discipline of the present. He observed that worrying about tomorrow's problems with today's energy is not only unnecessary, but counterproductive, because tomorrow's challenges will be met with tomorrow's capabilities, wisdom, and circumstances. Similarly, ruminating about past mistakes uses present moment resources to re-experience events that no longer exist except in memory. This doesn't mean ignoring the future or dismissing the past. Planning happens in the present. Learning from experience happens in the present. All actual living, thinking, choosing, and acting happens in the present. When you train your mind to recognize when it's psychologically time-traveling and gently return attention to current reality, you discover that the present moment always contains everything you need to handle whatever is actually occurring right now. The fourth law is the law of emotional responsibility, which states that you are always and entirely responsible for your emotional state, regardless of external provocations. This is perhaps the most challenging law for modern people to accept because we've been conditioned to believe that our emotions are automatic responses to external stimuli. The Stoics discovered something radically different. Emotions are not events that happen to you. They are experiences you create through your interpretations and judgments. This law doesn't deny that you have emotional reactions. It recognizes that between stimulus and emotional response, there's always a moment of interpretation, and that moment is where your power lies. Someone insults you, and in the microsecond between hearing their words and feeling hurt or anger, there's an interpretive process happening. You're deciding what those words mean about you, about them, about your relationship, about your worth. That decision-making process, however rapid and unconscious, is where your emotional experience is actually created. When you begin to slow down and examine this interpretive process, you discover something remarkable. You have far more choice in your emotional experience than you ever realized. You can choose to interpret criticism as valuable feedback rather than personal attack. You can choose to interpret rejection as redirection rather than inadequacy. You can choose to interpret loss as part of life's natural rhythm rather than evidence that life is cruel. This doesn't mean forcing artificial positivity. It means recognizing that your interpretation is always one of many possible interpretations, and you have the power to choose ones that serve your well-being and growth. The fifth law is the law of virtue supremacy, which states that excellence of character is the only good that can never be taken from you, and is therefore the only reliable foundation for lasting satisfaction and self-respect. This law challenges almost everything modern culture teaches about success, happiness, and self-worth. We're conditioned to believe that our well-being depends on accumulating external goods: wealth, status, approval, comfort, security. The Stoics discovered that this approach creates inevitable suffering because all external goods are temporary and beyond our ultimate control. Virtue, however, operates by completely different rules. Your commitment to honesty can't be destroyed by economic downturns. Your capacity for courage can't be diminished by other people's cowardice. Your practice of justice remains available regardless of how unjustly you might be treated. Your dedication to wisdom grows stronger through every experience, pleasant or difficult. When you anchor your sense of worth and satisfaction in the development of character rather than the accumulation of external rewards, you build a foundation that can weather any storm. This doesn't mean being indifferent to external outcomes or not working toward goals. It means recognizing that your peace and self-respect depend on the quality of effort and intention you bring to your endeavors, not on whether those endeavors produce the results you hope for. When you live according to this law, failure becomes information rather than identity, and success becomes an opportunity to practice virtue rather than proof of your worth. The sixth law is the law of obstacle transformation, which states that every impediment contains within it the seeds of growth, strength, and wisdom. This law represents one of the most sophisticated insights of Stoic psychology. What appears to block your path often becomes the path itself. Marcus Aurelius expressed this beautifully when he wrote that obstacles don't impede action but actually generate new forms of action, much like a river finding its way around rocks by creating new channels. Most people experience obstacles as interruptions to their plans, evidence that life is working against them, or confirmation that their goals are unrealistic. The Stoics discovered something radically different. Obstacles are not impediments to development. They are the raw material from which development occurs. The challenge that forces you to discover new capabilities. The loss that teaches you what truly matters. The rejection that redirects you towards something better aligned with your authentic nature. This law transforms your relationship with difficulty from resistance to curiosity. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you begin asking, "How is this experience serving my growth?" Instead of seeing setbacks as reasons to give up, you begin seeing them as information about what adjustments might be needed. Instead of viewing challenges as proof that you're on the wrong path, you begin recognizing them as confirmation that you're pushing the boundaries of your comfort zone in ways that promote genuine development. The seventh law is the law of death consciousness, which states that awareness of mortality enhances rather than diminishes the quality of life. This law operates contrary to most people's intuitive assumptions about death awareness. We typically avoid thinking about death because we assume it will create anxiety or depression. The Stoics discovered that regular contemplative awareness of life's finite nature actually intensifies appreciation, clarifies priorities, and eliminates trivial worries. Marcus Aurelius practiced a form of death meditation not to become morbid or fatalistic, but to maintain perspective on what truly matters. When you remember that your time is limited, that this day might be your last conversation with someone you love, that this moment of beauty or connection is unrepeatable and temporary, everything becomes more vivid and precious. Petty grievances lose their power to disturb your peace. Status competitions reveal themselves as distractions from more meaningful pursuits. Death consciousness also provides a unique form of courage. When you've genuinely accepted the inevitability of your own mortality, many fears lose their grip on you. The fear of embarrassment becomes insignificant when measured against the fear of never having tried. The fear of rejection pales beside the fear of never having been authentic. The fear of failure diminishes when compared to the fear of never having lived fully. This isn't about becoming reckless or indifferent. It's about allowing the reality of impermanence to clarify what deserves your precious life energy. The eighth and final law is the law of cosmic belonging, which states that individual peace and purpose are found through alignment with the larger patterns and purposes of existence. The Stoics understood that humans are not isolated individuals competing against a hostile universe, but integral parts of a vast, interconnected system that they called the logos, or universal reason. This law suggests that much of human suffering comes from feeling separate from, rather than connected to, the larger whole of which we are a part. When you operate according to this law, your individual challenges become part of a larger story of human growth and consciousness evolution. Your personal struggles contribute to the collective human experiment in learning how to live wisely. Your individual healing becomes a contribution to the healing of the larger human community. Your personal growth adds to the sum total of wisdom and compassion available in the world. This cosmic perspective doesn't diminish the importance of your individual life. It enlarges it by connecting it to purposes greater than personal comfort or achievement. When you see yourself as part of the larger human family, working out the same fundamental questions about how to love, how to find meaning, how to face uncertainty with grace, Your individual difficulties become less personally devastating and more universally meaningful. These 8 laws operate whether you're conscious of them or not, but conscious application amplifies their transformative power exponentially. When you begin to live according to these laws rather than fighting against them, you discover what the ancient Stoics knew. External circumstances become largely irrelevant to your inner state. This doesn't make you indifferent to outcomes or uncaring about results. Instead, it makes you more effective because your actions come from clarity rather than desperation, wisdom rather than reaction, purpose rather than compulsion. The transformation these laws create is not temporary or superficial. It's structural, altering the fundamental operating system of your consciousness. You begin to respond to life from a place of strength rather than defensiveness, curiosity rather than fear, service rather than self-protection. Problems that once seemed overwhelming become interesting challenges. People who once triggered your reactivity become opportunities to practice virtue. Uncertainties that once created anxiety become spaces for growth and discovery. This transformation doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't eliminate all difficulty from life. What it does is fundamentally change your relationship with difficulty, making you someone who can navigate challenges with grace, learn from setbacks with wisdom, and maintain inner peace regardless of external turbulence. You become what the Stoics called a sage, not someone who never faces problems, but someone whose character has been forged so thoroughly in the fire of conscious living that no external circumstance can disturb their essential peace. The beautiful paradox of these laws is that they require nothing external to operate. You don't need perfect circumstances, unlimited resources, or universal approval to begin applying them immediately. They work regardless of your current situation because they operate on the level of consciousness itself, transforming how you perceive and respond to whatever circumstances you find yourself in. As you begin to experiment with these laws, start with the one that resonates most strongly with your current challenges. Practice it consistently for several weeks, paying attention to how it changes not just your thoughts, but your actual experience of daily life. Notice how differently you feel when you're operating in harmony with these deeper patterns of human psychology rather than fighting against them. The Stoic path is not about perfection, but about direction. Every moment offers a new opportunity to choose the perspective that serves your growth, to respond from wisdom rather than reactivity, to align your individual life with the larger purposes of human flourishing. These laws are not rigid rules to follow, but living principles to embody, each one opening doorways to greater freedom, peace, and authentic power. What would your life look like if you fully trusted these laws? What risks might you take? What dreams might you pursue? What service might you offer if you knew that your well-being didn't depend on external outcomes, but on the quality of character you bring to every situation? These are not hypothetical questions, but invitations to discover the profound transformation that becomes possible when you align your life with the deepest laws governing human consciousness and flourishing.